Hello and welcome to our look inside the British Airways Business Class Lounge at London Heathrow's Terminal 5. As a bit of a teaser to our upcoming BA Business Class review, we are popping into their Business Class Lounge to take a look at the premium offerings available to those waiting to board their business class flights at London Heathrow. However, BA does not have one business class lounge at London Heathrow, it has 5. So let's take a look at which lounge you should visit on your flight out of London Heathrow. Terminal 5 is BA's home base, and it is almost solely for the use of British Airways, and it's a bit of a whopper. Not only is this the largest and busiest terminal in the UK, the main building is actually the largest freestanding structure in the UK, and it is one of the busiest airport terminals in the world. The building is so huge it was deemed that one lounge would not be enough. With customers taking too long to get from one end of the building to the other, there was a lounge built at both the northern and the southern ends of the building. Even then, this colossal building was still too small for the ever-expanding airline, and 2 satellite terminals were constructed to house even more aircraft and handle even more passengers. However, getting to these satellite terminals takes time, so yet another lounge was built out in the Terminal 5B to serve both satellite terminals B and C. There is also a business class lounge over in Terminal 3 and an arrivals lounge for those landing in Heathrow after their business class flights. And of course there is also the option of the 2 first class lounges for those lucky enough to be up in first. But unfortunately that was not us. With all that choice, you may be wondering which lounge to choose. Well, quite simply, just choose the one that is closest to your gate. Getting around this massive terminal can really take some time, so it's ultimately best to do this before you need to get to your flight, rather than afterwards with the clock running down to the doors closing. This is especially true of the satellite terminals that are accessed via the internal underground trains that run back and forth between the terminals. The BA Business Class lounges are largely exclusive for BA's business class passengers, so unless you are on a BA Business Class flight, there is no way to access these lounges. The only exceptions here are first class passengers, but they have access to the much nicer first class and Concorde lounges, so you would be a bit silly downgrading yourself. And also to certain levels of the One World Alliance's frequent flyer programs, when flying BA or a One World partner airline. Full details of these on the screen or on the BA website. But on the whole, due to the fact that almost all flights from T5 are BA operated, it's almost completely BA business class customers that occupy these lounges. However, BA's fleet is heavily tilted towards business travel, so these lounges can still get really busy. As we arrived in Heathrow from a connecting flight from Manchester, we ambled into the airport from the arrival gates. It was early afternoon and the terminal was pretty quiet. After checking the board, there was no gate assigned, so we just headed to the closest lounge while we waited for our gate to be allocated. This happened to be the Business Class Lounge South. After riding the escalator up to the galleries level and eyeing up the first class Concorde lounge, we checked into the Business Class Galleries Lounge South, only for the check-in agent to be slightly hesitant, before finally informing us our gate had just been allocated and we would be departing from the B gates, so could we use the B lounge to free up space here? This was basically music to our ears, as the B lounge is largely regarded as BA's best lounge at London Heathrow. It's not so much better than the others that it's worth the 20-minute slog over to the B gates if you are departing from the main building, but should your flight be out there, it's definitely a bonus. If you draw the short straw of the C gates, then there is no lounge over there, but you can still use the B lounge as it's at least on the way to the C gates. So we headed back down the escalators and headed over to the B gates on the wildly congested transit system, and found the elevated Galleries B lounge signposted very clearly as soon as we arrived in the satellite B terminal. This lounge largely gets its praise due to the space of the lounge and its lower passenger throughput. In the main building, things can get seriously busy, but out here it's just a bit more peaceful and quiet. The lounge is elevated above the main terminal and is blessed with a lot of natural light with large windows on either side opening out over the terminal's taxiways and aprons. There are various types of space and seating laid out around the lounge, which loops around the main entrance and has 2 ancillary wings on either side. The main space is quite busy with lots of seating options. We like the comfy seats looking out over the main terminal, and there is a nice boardroom style table which seems fun and quite communal. There is no actual bar in this lounge, but fear not, as there is plenty to drink and there is some nice bar style seating between the 2 self-serve bar areas. There were some more upright tables and chairs for those wanting a more upright dining room style seating option. However, we found our preferred home in the 2 additional wings. These were far quieter, and while the views were not as good, they offered a really light and airy space looking out over the main terminal, along with outdoor views of the A and B stands. The seats here were very comfy, and while not every seat had power, most did, and this was mostly low-level comfy seating, perfect for whiling away the time before your flight. Taking a look at the food options, it's a good time to point out that food and drink options are largely standardised across all lounges. The catering's all from the same company and you get the same food options each day in each lounge, so there's no real difference between them. Food-wise, we were pretty happy with the selection. There was a warm selection with soups, scones and various bits, and various accoutrements, and then there was a quirky picnic station with sandwiches, wraps, Scotch eggs and various deli items. This was the only manned station and you needed to ask for any items from this station. Across the way was a cold selection with a nice array of various salads from around the world, and all were really fresh and tasty. Finally, there was the hot selection with various pastas, stews and vegetables, all served piping hot, which is not always the case in airport lounges. On the negative side, everything was buffet style, which is not very high-end for a business class lounge. We like some buffet items, but also the option for some a la carte dishes too, and the dessert selection here was pretty terrible. We however loved the idea of the picnic station, and this may change through the year as a seasonal stand, and the Trifo Scotch eggs were simply fantastic. We also loved the Britishness of being able to grab an afternoon tea. Overall the food was good, if not outstanding. The drink selection was again a mixed bag. The Union coffee stations were excellent, and there are also lots of water and juice stations all over the lounge with copious amounts of soft drinks, so if you were not on the hard stuff, you'll be well catered. However, there was no tendered bar available in the lounge. This is a double-edged sword. We love the fact that we could be treated like adults and just help ourselves, and this was the best self-serve selection we have ever seen. There were several high-end whiskies, vodkas and rums, all available to pour yourself a glass, along with a few types of beer including BA's Brewdog collaboration Speedbird, the old call sign for Concorde. The wine selection looked decent and again was self-pour, and there were several options of every kind including both white and pink Prosecco, but no champagne. This is the positive side, as just helping ourselves really suits our drinking style, but it also means that there are fewer refinements. There was no draft beer on offer, and again, the lack of bartender probably was the main reason for withholding the champagne, and it also meant there were no cocktails, something we tend to look for in lounges of this calibre. To combat this, there were some pre-mixed cocktails such as an old-fashioned and a Negroni, but these were not the best quality and we much prefer a freshly made drink. With so much on offer, it was possible to knock up a few cocktails yourself, such as a nice vodka martini, but that was a bit of a faff. Overall, as we said, there are upsides and downsides to having a self-serve bar, but on the whole, we like the treated as adults approach that the lounge takes. We should also mention that there was some Whispering Angel rosé wine on offer. The stand was very small and understated, but we just about noticed it. We have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this brand. While it's a pretty decent wine, it's way overpriced and survives simply on hype, but it's always nice to be able to drink the top shelf stuff for free while posing for those back home. This was obviously a temporary installation though, so may not be there on your trip. Upon our entry, there was an obvious coat and luggage check, which is not always the case and not available at every lounge. Other than that, there was not that much in the way of amenities. There was Wi-Fi, obviously, along with some magazines and newspaper racks. There was a kids zone to help keep any little ones occupied, and a few TVs with news channels playing, and most, if not all seats had ample charging facilities, and carrying out a little business while in the lounge will be no problem. However, we didn't notice any mobile phone rooms. These are popping up more and more, and we really like the idea. But here, any calls you have to make will need to be made in public, and there also seem to be no rest, relax, stroke dark areas, which again is becoming pretty standard. The bathrooms were pretty decent and were individual cubicle style, so you got some space to yourself. We also found them clean and fresh despite this being mid-afternoon with a whole morning of heavy use. They also came with some fancy Elemis toiletries, which was a nice touch. Showers were also available, but they seemed to be unattended and we found it pretty hard to get one opened for us. Inside they were not the best. They were the same small cubicle as the main bathrooms, but with a really small plasticky shower cubicle crammed in. Not much to write home about, but refreshing enough if you are desperate. We spent a good few hours in the lounge as we had purposely planned a long layover just to get some good time in here, and overall it was a really nice place to while away the time before our boarding. The few issues and downsides we have pointed out are not deal breakers, just areas that could be improved, and are just not quite up to what we have found at other business class lounge offerings. Compared to BA's main rivals Virgin Atlantic, the BA lounge stands up quite well, although it definitely does fall a bit short behind Virgin Atlantic's clubhouse and Heathrow's T3. The atmosphere and vibe is just a bit more clinical rather than the hippie funk vibe over at the clubhouse. The drinks offering is also lagging behind, with bags of champagne on offer and handmade cocktails available at any time. The food at Virgin's Lounge also offers a la carte dining along with the buffet options and is streets ahead of BA's. But then again, the Virgin Atlantic Clubhouse is probably our favourite lounge anywhere in the world, at least at business class level. Pitted against the other airline lounges at Heathrow, the gallery's offering is right up there, and anyone travelling business class would be perfectly content with the facilities on offer here. Unfortunately, this just seems to be BA's MO at the minute. Solid without being spectacular. Everything has a steady business-style feel while never excelling, just providing the necessities, not the bells and whistles. We hope you enjoyed this look inside BA's business class lounge and know what to expect on your next trip on business class next time you are passing through London Heathrow's Terminal 5. As we said at the beginning, this is just a teaser for our full business class review that should be dropping imminently, so make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel so you know when that drops, and we will add a link above and in the description for any latecomers. We have a heap of really cool travel content coming up, so we'd love it if you could come along for the ride. Thanks for watching.